just as with any other human institution, that time and experience are just as necessary to determine the usefulness of governments and constitutions. Let us never enter into alteration or change simply for the want of innovation or novelty. Likewise, let us remember that before such alteration is made by the choice of the people as a whole, the Constitution as it exists at any given time is the law of our land and must be given all due respect and dignity. There is no more power granted unto our general government than that which is absolutely necessary for the business of good government. These powers are divided betwixt a legislative, executive, and judicial branch in such fashion that there may never rise an aristocracy, a monarchy, an oligarchy, or any other form of despotic or tyrannic government, provided there remains virtue within the breasts of our people. For by way of our Constitution, the sovereignty of this nation shall always lay within its people. Let us never allow any branch of our government to encroach upon the powers of the other two. For such encroachment tends to concentrate all the powers of government into just a few hands, and it is a true form of despotism. Or there may well arise some occasions where this encroachment appears to give some temporary benefit or to increase our national security. But we must always be mindful that it is by encroachment that one finds the usual means by which free governments are destroyed. Therefore, any benefit which may be had on the short term by encroachment is greatly outweighed by the evils of such precedents. If there is some error in how the powers of our government be distributed, let them be altered. And let them be altered by amendment and never by encroachment. I mentioned earlier that we should endeavor to avoid seeing factions arise by way of regional distinctions. But it's just as important that we endeavor to avoid seeing factions arise by the spirit and fury of party politics. The alternating domination of one political party over another, spurred on by the spirit of revenge, will always drive a nation further and further from its better interests and greater counsels. A man not to be a servant of his nation, but merely a servant to a political party. Now, I'm aware that there may be those amongst your number who might argue that this spirit of political party is necessary to keep a government free. And that may be true in those governments of a more monarchical cast. But any truly free government, such as our own, there will always be enough difference of opinion for any useful purpose without the creation of political parties. There also may be those amongst your number who might argue that this spirit of faction, that it is a portion of our human natures. And that may be also true. But just as we have in other ways endeavored to improve upon the way that nature finds us, to guide ourselves not by our irregular passions and desires, but rather by reason and conscience, so too must we endeavor to circumscribe our tendencies towards faction. Political party is a very dangerous fire, which if allowed to smolder unwatched, will consume everything before it. As it is a pillar of both our strength and our security, let us always endeavor to preserve public credit. One of the best means by which public credit may be preserved is to avoid spending it unnecessarily, remembering always that timely disbursements to provide for a nation's defense is oftentimes more affordable than those occasions of necessary war when they arise without such preparation. And when we find ourselves in those circumstances of necessary war, let us remember that the debts caused by such actions must be paid. and never left ungenerously, to be paid by our children or our children's children, which ought to have been paid by ourselves. This last maxim is, of course, the responsibility of your representatives within the legislature. That public opinion has a portion in which it must play, which is simply this: that for debt to be paid, there must be revenue. And for there to be revenue, there must be taxes. And there have never been taxes created which are not inconvenient and unpleasant. As to our foreign affairs, let us reach our hands across the ocean as friends. Let us endeavor to see peace and harmony expanded across the globe. Religion and morality both enjoin us to such action, and can it somehow be that good counsel does not likewise engender similar advice? Let us reach our hands across the ocean as friends. Let us see our commerce expand. But there let our relations with foreign powers end. Let us never allow our affairs of state to be driven by too strong of an affection, or for that matter, too strong of a hatred for a foreign nation. For again, these are forms of slavery. The one, a nation becomes a slave to its love, and the other a slave to its hatred. Too much affection for a foreign nation causes a country to imagine common interests and sympathies where none exist. And too much hatred for a foreign nation causes a country to imagine insult where none were meant, and therefore to too easily find itself drawn into unnecessary war. We find ourselves in the most remarkable of circumstances. Providence has made us the sole lords of a vast tract of continent. One that provides us with all the soils of the earth and many of its climates, and therefore might provide us with all the necessities of life and many of its conveniences. By way of our victory over Great Britain, we are now generally acknowledged to be in the complete possession of our own independence and liberty. And Providence has now crowned those previous blessings. By way of our American Constitution, and more recently, our Bill of Rights, with a greater promise of political happiness than any nation has heretofore been offered. Why would we forego these advantages? To step away from our own native soils, to engage in foreign wars which are no concern of our own. The war in Europe twixt England and France is an ancient feud and no concern of our own. Let us not allow ourselves to grow embroiled in foreign entanglements. I dare not suppose that any of these words will long be remembered. If they occasionally come to serve to protect this nation from false patriotism, or the spirit and fury of party politics, or leave us disengaged in foreign intrigues, then I, for one, will certainly be satisfied. Whether or not I've guided myself by these maxims myself these last 7 years, I believe the public record will answer. But let me affirm to you all here and now that I've always at least considered myself guided by them. But I'm also too full aware of my own shortcomings to not imagine that I must have committed many errors. I beseech the Almighty to reduce whatever evils these errors may tend towards. And I hope that you, the people, that when you look upon them, that you will do so with indulgence. With the knowledge that any errors I may have committed have never been from a malignancy of my heart, but rather merely a want of talent equal to the zealousness of my patriotism. I look forward now to stepping away from the public stage, to taking my place alongside you as a common citizen in a free and independent United States of America. I believe that we are all, from here forward, to be viewed as players on a most conspicuous of stages, one that seems destined by Providence for displays of human greatness and felicity. Our systems of government, they are not perfect, but no more perfect government has ever been created by man. And there may be some promises that have been put forth that we as a people have yet to achieve. But that is now our responsibility together, as citizens of a free and independent United States, to make good on those unanswered questions. And I, for one, take strength in my knowledge that Providence, after having already carried us through so many dangers and hazards, will not now leave its work undone. It's certainly time that we put our spirits and our fortitudes to the greatest of tests. God save us all. And God save the Constitution of the United States of America.